Okay. So, tonight we have two miracles wrapped up into one. And so, in thinking about the story tonight, you got to start thinking about miracles. And why does Jesus perform miracles? The way I look at it, the miracles which Jesus performs are, in fact, physical parables. There are parables which he tells people and says, you know, like the Good Samaritan, and tells it. But when he performs a miracle, it is in itself also a parable, and it's supposed to teach us something about ourselves spiritually. So when Jesus feeds 5,000, he's not telling you how to feed a lot of people. When he walks across the water, he's not telling you how you can, you know, get to someplace over another lake faster, right? When he changes water into wine, he's not telling you what to do at your next party. That's not what it's about. And if we look at his miracles, we see that consistent pattern, that that's nearly not what he's talking about. Every time there's a spiritual truth hidden in the midst of the miracles. So when we hear the miracle tonight about healing the woman with a discharge of blood and of raising the little girl from the dead, this is not a miracle so much about how we can go and heal, than how we can raise someone from the dead, as much as we would like. It's about some deeper spiritual truth. And the deeper spiritual truth is found in his words to the leader of the synagogue, which is, don't be afraid, believe. Or don't be afraid, have faith. That is the contrast. Fear and faith. Last week we talked about fear. Jesus was on the boat, and the water was coming in, causing the boat about to sink. And his disciples said, you know, what are you doing? Why don't you just try to stop the wind? And he gets up and says, peace, be still. And all of a sudden the wind and the rain stop. Again, it's not a story. A miracle is not performed simply to show us how to deal with the weather, right? The miracle is there to point us to some deeper spiritual truth. And so the deeper spiritual truth tonight is, don't be afraid, just have faith. Sometimes appears to be easier said than done, right? Okay, it's easy to have faith when you're not having trouble. The two stories we have tonight are very interwoven. And the two miracles are not separate. It's not as though the first miracle, he's on his way to heal the little girl, and another miracle just happens along. These two miracles are very related, and they show us how God works, and how he works not just for certain people, but he works for everybody, and works in different ways. And in the midst of all of the differences in the two stories, there is a consistency that it is faith in God which gets you through the troubles which you encounter. Now, the story starts off with Jesus arriving. Jesus has been over in the Gentile portion of Galilee. He has been over there, and he's just healed a man in the cemetery who was possessed by demons, and he just healed that person. And now he has come back across the lake and the sea, and he comes to the side of the water, and what's waiting for him? A crowd. And one of the things we see over and over again in the parables, in miracles, in Mark, are certain characters which appear repeatedly. One of which is the crowd. Another of which are the disciples. Another of which is the Jewish officials. And the fourth is Jesus. Those four, as we go through and we read story after story after story in the Bible, we'll see those four characters repeatedly appear. And one of the things maybe you want to think about as you listen to this story is, well, who am I in that story? Okay? Am I just one of the crowd? Am I one of his disciples? Am I a religious person? Or am I acting like Jesus. Who am I in the story? And so in this story, he comes to the edge of the water, and there's this big crowd, and all of a sudden, along comes the Jewish official. Okay? Now, generally in these stories, the Jewish officials are the people who are attacking Jesus, right? They're always attacking Jesus. There's a crowd following Jesus, the Jewish officials attacking Jesus. In this case, it's the Jewish official who gets down on his knees and says, I need you to come and put your hands on my little daughter. My little daughter. Now, she's a 12-year-old. We don't really often think of a 12-year-old as being my little daughter, right? But you know, when you have a daughter, she's always your little daughter, right? Always your little daughter. You know, and as I read that passage, I think about not people who've come to me about their daughter being sick, but their daughter being in trouble. How many times have I had people come in and see me in my office, and they say, what happened to my little girl, right? What happened to my little girl? She was just a wonderful kid. Everything was perfect. She studied. She was polite. Everything was good. And I say, well, how old is she? Well, she's 14, 15. Oh. And I say, well, don't worry. She'll be 30 someday, and it'll all be better. Right? But you know, right there is the problem. Okay? It's that problem. Something has happened to my little girl. Can you come? The faith is, you come and you touch her, she's going to get better. She's going to get better. If you just, Jesus, all you got to do is touch her. Now, did Jesus need to go to his house and touch her to make her better? No. Matter of fact, another time a general comes to Jesus and says, you know, I know that you have control. I have control over men. I say this people go here and there, and I know you can do the same thing. So he says, no one has greater faith than you, because you know that I can go heal. I can just sell the healing to heal the person right now. So did Jesus have to go all the way over there? No. But here's this official, and he comes in the open, in front of everybody, and tells everybody, heal my daughter. Come, touch her. Jesus goes on his way. And what happens as he goes on his way? There is a woman in the crowd who has had bleeding for 12 years. Bleeding, which is, you know, a physical problem. In the Jewish community, it is a spiritual problem. She is considered unclean. She's not allowed to participate in the life of the community. She is an outcast. You know, she is ritually unclean, and she is someone who the Jewish official would have said, you're unclean, get out of here, right? And yet there she is. Unlike the Jewish official, she doesn't bow down in front of everybody. She has it all inside coming to her, right? She's coming to her, and when she wants to go and to share that with, ask for that healing. And so she goes up, and she touches Jesus. She says, if only I touch his cloak, I'll be made well. Do you have to touch Jesus' cloak to be healed? No. Right? Now sometimes you'll see ministers on TV, and you know we got it on YouTube now, so maybe I should start doing that. But well, we're going to cut little pieces of cloth, and I'll send them to you and pray over them, and you're going to be healed. Do you have to touch that little piece of cloth? No, that's not what it's about. But what it's about is faith, right? It's trusting in God, that God will take care, that God is going to, you know, she had that faith. Was it perfect faith? No. It wasn't. And yet she wanted to do that. This woman had been spending 12 years seeking medical treatment, right? Do we know people like that? People that have gone to every single doctor and say, Doc, can you make me well? And they give some pills and it doesn't make you better, and send you for therapy and it doesn't make you better, and right? All those kinds of things, right? We've been there. And she is one of the crowd. And you know what? There are lots of people in the crowd, just like her, with something deep inside them which they're hiding, and they want Jesus to heal it, right? That crowd is in the church. The crowd is in our circle of friends, right? You know, we talking before we worshiped tonight about people who have, you know, had major problems, right? Do we know that? No. They're fighting those things inside, quietly. And in that crowd of people, there are all sorts of people who just have to have the faith to reach out and touch. Jesus looks around and said, how did this happen? How did this happen? Now, while he's saying that, the official is right there with him, right? The official, the ruler of the synagogue. And he's, who touched me? They're waiting. And finally the lady says, it was me. She gets down on her hands and knees, just like Jairus did, and says, you know, I was the one. Jesus says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go and be relieved of your troubles. Okay? Not just relieved of your bleeding, not just your medical, but you're relieved of your troubles. Now Jairus is standing right there watching all this. And he knows that the lady has said what her problem is. And he knows that she's touched Jesus, which would make Jesus unclean. He sees all of this. But he also hears Jesus call that little girl daughter. Right? And just like Jairus is worried about his little daughter, right? So it is that God is worried about his little daughters, right? Whoever they are. He cares about them. Just says, reach out, touch me. Jesus heads on to the house of Jairus, and they get a messenger meets him along the way, says, don't bother the teacher, your daughter's dead. Right? That sounds like a pretty logical thing, right? You know? Okay, you wanted to have this rabbi come and pray over your daughter. The guy's busy, right? Let's not bother him. Let's not bother him. But that's not what it's about. It's about faith which transcends what you physically can see. It's faith which transcends what you mentally know. Okay? It's faith which transcends what the community is saying, what the crowd is saying, what the officials are saying. It's faith that gets bigger and deeper than that. Jesus says, no, she's just sleeping. Just sleeping. The girl's dead. Okay? The girl is dead. And he shows up and he says this, why are you crying? Well, why are they crying? Well, in our nature, we would cry when someone has just died. Right? And yet, you know, when Jesus says that, they stop their crying and they laugh at him. Right? They laugh at him, going, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Jesus throws them all out. Right? And so the Jewish official who came in the open to everybody and says, please heal my daughter. The healing is happening in total privacy. At the same time that woman who just wanted to touch him, right? She came in total privacy. The whole world saw what happened, right? He flips things around. He does things around and says, there's no one special way. There's no particular way it's going to happen. The bottom line is you got to have faith and you got to trust. Don't worry about the mechanics. Don't worry if I'm supposed to touch. Don't worry if I'm supposed to do it in public. Don't worry if I'm supposed to do it in private. Don't worry about that. Don't be afraid. Have faith. Don't be afraid. Have faith. And he says to the guy's daughter, he doesn't call her daughter, but he says little girl.